I still remember the first day I met her. The smell of roasted coffee beans, the faint sound of jazz playing through the cafe speakers, and the way sunlight poured through the window, tinting everything in gold. We were both sketching designs that day, two dreamers with ink-stained fingers and big ideas. She smiled at me over her cup, said she liked the pattern I was drawing, and just like that, something clicked. We started talking, laughing, realizing how much we had in common. It felt like I'd found a sister I never knew I needed. We spent hours together, sketching, dreaming, building castles out of paper and ink. She had this charm that drew people in, while I had the patience to perfect every detail. Together, we made the perfect balance, or so I thought. Our dorm room was always filled with color, fabrics draped over chairs, half-finished designs on the wall, laughter echoing late into the night. We'd stay up until dawn, talking about what our lives would look like when we made it. She'd say, "We'll conquer the fashion world together." And I believed her. There was one night, I still remember vividly. I was exhausted from sketching for hours, while she was scrolling through her phone, giggling at something on social media. I told her I was scared we'd fail, scared that maybe our dreams were too big for two small-town girls. She reached out, took my pinky finger, and said, "We're in this together, forever." That promise, I carried it like a sacred thing. I wish I'd known then that forever has an expiration date. It started with little things, whispers, strange pauses, the feeling that something wasn't being said out loud. I noticed how she'd smile when her phone buzzed, how she'd quickly turn the screen away when I looked. I told myself I was being paranoid. Friends don't lie, right? But the distance grew quietly, like cracks in glass, invisible until it shatters. We used to share everything, dreams, ideas, even secrets. But suddenly, she stopped showing me her sketches. She'd changed the topic when I asked what she was working on. I brushed it off as stress, we were both trying to launch our first collection. But the truth was already unraveling in the shadows. One afternoon, I caught a glimpse of her screen. She was chatting with someone from the investor group we'd been pitching to together. My name never came up. It stung, but I stayed silent. I didn't want to lose her over suspicion. But deep down, something inside me knew, trust was starting to rot. We smiled for pictures, attended events side by side, and played the perfect duo. But our laughter started sounding rehearsed. And sometimes, when I caught her looking at me, there was something behind her eyes, something sharp. I ignored it, convincing myself that real friendship could survive a few storms. I had no idea the storm was already brewing. The night everything fell apart was supposed to be one of the best nights of my life. We'd been invited to a major fashion event, a chance to pitch our designs to investors who could change everything. I was nervous but proud. I'd poured my soul into every sketch, every fabric choice. She stood beside me, radiant and confident, whispering that we were about to make history. When the lights dimmed and the runway came alive, my heart raced with excitement. I watched as models walked out wearing the designs I'd spent months perfecting. But something felt off. The name on the screen, the name they were announcing, wasn't mine. It was hers. My breath caught. I looked at her, and she didn't even flinch. She smiled, wide, graceful, beautiful, and waved at the crowd as if she had earned every stitch, every line, every idea. I stood frozen, watching my own creations come to life under someone else's name. The applause was deafening, the flash of cameras blinding. And there I was, invisible. Betrayal has a sound. It's the silence between heartbeats when you realize someone you trusted has stolen your voice. I wanted to scream, to tear it all apart, but I couldn't move. Investors shook her hand, congratulated her. One of them even pointed at me and said, "You must be so proud of your friend." I forced a smile, but inside, something cracked beyond repair. That night, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. I just went home, stared at my empty sketchbook, and felt the weight of every lie she'd told. I thought it was over. I thought losing my dream was the worst kind of betrayal. But I was wrong. I thought betrayal would feel like fire, like something that scorches everything it touches. But the truth? It's colder. It creeps in like frost, silent and invisible until everything that once felt alive is frozen solid. When I saw my best friend take credit for my work, I didn't even feel anger at first. Just disbelief. I wanted to believe there was some mistake, that maybe I'd missed something, that she'd clear things up. But she didn't. She basked in the glory, smiled for cameras, gave interviews, and mentioned her inspiration, never once saying my name. I went home that night and tore through my apartment, searching for something that still felt like mine. My sketches were gone. My digital files? Locked out. She'd changed the passwords to our shared folder. Every design I'd poured myself into, she'd taken them all. For days, I stayed in bed. My phone kept lighting up with notifications, pictures from the event, articles about her meteoric rise. Every headline felt like a knife twisting deeper. I couldn't even cry anymore. My eyes had already given everything they had. And then, like a cruel echo of fate, came the second betrayal. My boyfriend, the one person I thought I could still lean on, stopped answering my calls. At first, I told myself he was just busy. But the silence stretched into days, and the days into weeks. My gut told me something wasn't right. One rainy evening, I walked past a small restaurant downtown. I wasn't even supposed to be there, I just needed air. Needed to walk somewhere far from my thoughts. But fate has a twisted sense of timing. Through the window, I saw them, her and him. They were sitting across from each other, laughing. The same laugh I used to share with both of them. He reached out and touched her hand across the table, and in that moment, everything I'd ever known about love and friendship shattered. I stood in the rain, watching, numb. The world around me blurred, not because of the storm, but because I couldn't tell where my tears ended and the raindrops began. I didn't confront them, I couldn't. I just walked away, my shoes heavy with water, my heart heavier with betrayal. That night, I sat by the window until morning. My reflection looked like a ghost, hollow, unrecognizable. I whispered to myself, "Why me?" over and over. But there was no answer. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. Bills piled up. I lost my job because I couldn't concentrate. The apartment I'd once decorated with color now looked like a tomb, empty, cold, lifeless. There were nights I didn't even eat. Nights I just sat staring at the wall, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. She'd not only taken my dreams, she'd taken my confidence, my stability, my sense of self. And he'd taken what was left of my trust. I started to believe maybe I deserved it. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe that's why they both left me behind. But pain has a strange way of clearing your vision. When you lose everything, you start to see things as they truly are. One morning, while packing up what little I had left, I found an old sketchbook. It was buried under a pile of forgotten things, dusty, worn, its corners frayed. I opened it, and there they were, my old designs. The ones I'd drawn before her. Before fame, before lies. As I flipped through the pages, something stirred inside me. A small spark, faint, but alive. I realized she could steal my drawings, but not my imagination. She could take my ideas, but not the soul that created them. For the first time in months, I smiled. A small, broken smile, but a real one. That night, I stayed up until dawn, sketching. My hands trembled at first, rusty from neglect. But soon, the rhythm returned, the flow of pencil to paper, the dance of lines turning into vision. I whispered to my reflection in the window, I'll take it back. Not just the career, not just the name. But myself. I started rebuilding in secret. I took on small jobs during the day, waiting tables, delivering packages, and spent my nights sewing, sketching, designing. My room became my new studio, my lamp, my sun. It was hard, harder than anything I'd ever done. Some nights, I fell asleep over the sewing machine. Some mornings, I woke up with tears dried on my cheeks. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Because every stitch I sewed was a wound healing. Every line I drew was a scar turning into strength. Weeks turned into months. One night, after posting one of my new designs anonymously online, I went to bed thinking no one would even notice. But the next morning, I woke up to hundreds of likes. People were sharing it, commenting, calling it fresh, brave, revolutionary. Someone messaged me, a small boutique owner, asking if I could collaborate. My hand shook as I typed my reply. It was the first time in forever that someone had believed in me again. The orders started trickling in, small but steady. My tiny apartment filled with fabric, thread, and a quiet kind of hope. Every delivery I made felt like a step out of the ashes. Then one morning, I opened my inbox and froze. There was an email from a fashion house, one of the biggest names in the industry. They'd seen my work online, they wanted to meet. I stared at the screen for a long time before tears finally came. Not the kind that hurt, but the kind that wash everything clean. The event was grand, a massive runway show, flashing lights, cameras everywhere. The same world that once rejected me was opening its doors again. But this time, I wasn't the naive girl standing in someone else's shadow. I was different, stronger, sharper. I walked into that hall quietly, wearing black, not as mourning, but as armor. The show began, and when I saw her, my former friend, standing on stage again, smiling for the cameras, I felt nothing. No anger, no hate, just calm. Because I knew what was coming. As the LED screens lit up behind her, showcasing the new collection, there was a sudden glitch. Then another, the audience murmured, confused. And then it happened, the images on the screens changed. They showed my original sketches. The timestamps, the proof that those designs were mine. Every stolen idea, exposed in front of the entire fashion world. The crowd gasped. Reporters began whispering. The investors turned to her with wide eyes. Her smile faded, replaced by panic. And I just stood there, silent, watching justice unfold without lifting a finger. Security moved in. The organizers demanded an explanation. Cameras flashed as she tried to speak, to twist another lie, but it was too late. The truth had finally outrun her deception. I watched as she was escorted off stage, the same stage where she once basked in stolen glory. The same spotlight that once blinded me now burned her. When reporters asked me to comment, I simply said, "Creativity can be copied, but authenticity cannot," and I walked away. The press called it the greatest exposure scandal in modern fashion, but for me, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, my name, my dignity, my peace. Months later, life felt lighter. I launched my own line, under my own name. Every piece told a story, not of betrayal, but of rebirth. People resonated with it, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. One morning, as I walked through the city, the same streets that once saw me at my lowest, I caught my reflection in a shop window. The woman looking back wasn't broken anymore. She was whole. I stopped by a cafe I used to love. Through the window, I saw her, my ex-friend, sitting alone at a corner table, no cameras, no laughter, just her and a cup of cold coffee. Our eyes met for a moment. She looked away first. And I smiled, not out of spite, but out of freedom. Because I had finally learned that sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger. It's success, it's peace, it's walking away and never looking back, because you've already won. Now, when I sit in my studio, surrounded by fabrics and light, I sometimes think of how it all began, two girls in a coffee shop, dreaming of taking on the world together. And maybe, in some strange way, we did. She taught me how deep betrayal can cut. But she also taught me how strong I could become. I forgave her, not for her sake, but for mine. Because forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just loosens its grip on your future.